Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we look at some whiskeys and bourbons that I have managed to pick up and present them in a store haul fashion to you folks at home. Run the video. All right then, folks, thank you so much for joining us for another episode here on the Whiskey Cove, where we will be looking at a great selection of whiskey, bourbons, some other stuff too, that I picked up in the last month or to 2 months or so. It's been a little while since we've done one of these videos, and I haven't really been going out just hunting as much as I'd like, but we still managed to find some really great bottles and also some really interesting ones as well. I'll bring each one up and I'll explain a little bit why I picked it up. With that being said, first up, we have a look at some of the bottles we managed to kill off in the last month or two. And in the last episode of this series, I promised you I'd have some empty bottles, and I definitely did. We managed to kill off a Heaven Hill. This is the old style. This is the 6-year bourbon. This wasn't very good, a little flat. I picked this up in Kentucky a couple of years ago. We shared it with some of the patrons as well. Some of them liked it. Not for me. Like I said, I think it was a little bit flat. I would go after the Heaven Hill 7 instead. Next up, we have a Welsh whiskey, and that is Penderyn Celt. This is finished in Buffalo Trace bourbon barrels or Evan Williams bourbon barrels, so we get lots of vanilla, a touch of spice on the back end, but really nice and juicy apples and pears. Really nice, enjoyable spring whiskey. Next up, and we also have this High West barrel pick. This is the double rye, and this is the Tawny Port finish, one of my favorite double ryes. I have one more of these left, and then when that's gone, it's gone, because the barrel program's completely different. If I find one of those, I'm definitely gonna pick it up. Next up, we finally killed off this bottle. So the first year I did this channel, around Christmas time, I announced the worst whiskeys that I've had over the course of the year. And since that video, I haven't really done that video style, just because I'm not a big fan of bashing on whiskeys. However, this won that competition. This was terrible, and it's taken about 2.5 years to kill off. Town and Branch Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey Single Barrel. I don't know what was wrong with this single barrel. It was just wildly off and should never have been put out. I definitely will be staying away from Town Branch just because of that. However, maybe if I get an opportunity to try it, I'm always welcome for whiskies to change my mind. Next up, we have a 1792 aged 12 years. I have a backup for this one, and I also have a backup for the backup because it is very, very good. Fortunately, I managed to find the backup for around $65, which is an excellent price. What a great whiskey. I'm very happy that I have, and very humbled that I have a couple more. We also killed off Old Forester 1910, a bit of a kind of pillar here at the Whiskey Cove. We always have a bottle of 1910 because it is the best toasted whiskey, in my humbled opinion. And then lastly, Doc Swinson's. This is the straight rye whiskey finished in quarter peated casks. Very good whiskey, not overly peaty. If you're someone who likes a little bit of scotch, but not too overly heavy on the peat, then you might want to try that one. So that was all the whiskey that we killed off this month. And I did tell you that we were gonna have a few bottles. Now, moving on to the bottles that we managed to pick up. But before we do, if you're not a subscriber, it is an excellent time to be one as we approach 10,000 subscribers. We are giving a bottle away every 500 subscribers, and at the end, we are going to do this awesome live stream where you can win some fantastic whiskey. You need to do 2 things. You need to A, be a subscriber, and then B, you need to go down after this video in the link in the description and then submit your ticket. You have to be 21 or older. The first 2 bottles that we have so far is this old Rip Van Winkle 10-year, and then we also have a non-chill filtered Wild Turkey Red Breed. This is the international exclusive and pretty critically acclaimed. So these are 2 bottles. We have 4 more to announce. I'm very excited to start announcing them. As soon as we hit 8,500, we will announce 1 more for that lottery. So the first bottle that we managed to pick up, and that is an Early Times bottled in bond. Not just any old Early Times bottled in bond. This one does have the black cap. So I was really fortunate recently that I ran across a store, a little bit of a hidden gem, so to speak, because they had a lot of whiskey, and a lot of whiskey that isn't super allocated, but stuff like this, and a black top, stuff that had been sitting there at the back of the shelf for a while. So we did a video not so long ago on Early Times, and part of that video was I messaged Sazerac asking a little bit about why we're not seeing it as much, and they said that we should start seeing the new Sazerac version of Early Times April or May. So we might see a bottle change, we might see a label change, so definitely watch that space. Pay $25 for this. Some will say there's a big difference between that Early Times and the ones with a metal cap. I don't really see as much. However, it's always a fun bottle to have on hand. And at that same store, we managed to pick up this ancient aged 10. So this isn't aged 10 years, it's 10 star being the recipe. Some folks say this is the plastic 1.75 cheap version of Blanton's, as it shares a similar mash bill. I believe it's the same one. Buffalo Traces, they have two mash bills, mash bill 1, mash bill 2, the wheated mash bill and the rye mash bill, and probably some other stuff that they're cooking up down at Buffalo Trace. However, 1.75 litre for $30. I have one over my shoulder here. I also have a backup, but I haven't really been seeing these a lot lately. So I stumbled on that. I stumbled on the early times. I walked out to the door after spending $55 and I got 2.75 litres of decent whiskey at the very least. Next up, and we are gonna jump over to tequila. So I thought I had a bottle of the Blanco Fortaleza, and I didn't. I have a Reposado, so I needed to find one of these because when we were having our poker night and having some friends over, I have some tequila drinkers in the crew, and I said, I have this really awesome tequila you want to try. And the gentleman said that I only drink Blanco tequila, and I didn't have one of these. So I stumbled across this bad boy for $59.99, and I think that's a pretty good price for Fortaleza. And I know they have like the still strength, which is a little bit more ABV, but I couldn't find that. But these in Colorado, you're starting to see them quite a lot. Not always at that price for $59.99. Most of the time, $60 to $80. So when I saw that, and knowing that it would go to kind of a good cause was to have people around, that was a little bit of a no-brainer. Next up, and we say something on this whiskey channel, and it's kind of been a little bit of a, kind of like a slogan, if you like, and that is, if you see a Buffalo Trace single barrel for $30 or less, you pick it up, and that is no stranger to this bottle. There's been a few different Buffalo Trace barrels that have been dropping here in Colorado. I haven't, like I said, been doing too much hunting. I'm not really going to go to a store specifically just for this bottle. However, we were able to pick this one up, and this is from Applejack's. This is barrel number 619. They had a couple of other different ones there too, but it was right at the peak of how much I like to pay for these, and that was $29.99. We have a bunch of these already. So we didn't really need to go loading up on some of the other versions that they had. I think they had a couple more different barrels. They had this really nice big display. I think they had like 4 different Buffalo Trace single barrels. But however, we picked this one up. Very happy to get that, especially for that cost, because some of you folks at home tell me that you don't even see Buffalo Trace full stop, let alone the single barrels. My own personal experience with Buffalo Trace single barrels is that they kind of fight a little bit above their price tag. I would probably prefer a Buffalo Trace single barrel over to an Elmer T. Lee. Not just me saying that. We've done a blind and it's come out better. Yes, the single barrels are all different, but so is Elmer T. Lee. So Buffalo Trace single barrel, $30, absolute bargain. We have Penelope bourbon, and this is their new release. This is their wheated bourbon. Cost me $30. Very happy to find it for that price, and you shouldn't be overspending on this bottle. I'm a big wheated bourbon fan, and the good thing is about this, which you generally don't see for whiskey around this price category, and this is non-chill filtered, and it'll be interesting to see if that can change the flavor profile a little bit. I haven't had anything wheated from Penelope. It's mostly, I assume, all MGP stuff, and that stuff I have had. Think of like Old Elk's earlier stuff with their wheated bourbon. This is going to be coming in at 47.5% ABV or 95 proof, which is a decent ABV and proof. I would have liked it to be 50 or 100 proof, 50% ABV or 100 proof. However, I'm very happy that it's not 90 proof or it's not 80 proof. So I'll take what I can get. We are going to do a review on this bottle, so definitely watch this space. And hopefully I can do it this week, and I'm hoping that it's just going to blow my socks off. There's nothing more I like better than finding a great budget wheated bourbon. There's not many out there. The Larcenary single barrel, the regular small batch, they can be some very good stuff, and they can age around 7 years. Maker's Mark continually put out some excellent stuff. I'm thinking like Maker's 46. And then also on top of that, you get the barrel proofs with the Larceny, and you get some other stuff out there, but it'll sit a little bit above that price category. Next up, and we have this Old Forester 1920. It was a little dusty when I got it because it's been sitting on the shelf for a while. It is kind of just Old Forester 1920, but the eagle-eyed viewers who are watching this video will notice that this is the old label, so it looks a little bit like that. They've completely, I wouldn't say completely actually, they've changed the label up a little bit, like this blue Prohibition style has changed on it. I haven't bought a new bottle of Old Forester 1920, so I can't really tell to see if there is a difference. if anybody's watching and they've tasted the two, let me know down below if you've been able to pick up any differences. There's not really videos out there talking about it, so I assume not, but we might have to pick up one of the newer versions of Old Forester 1920 just to make that judgment ourselves. 57.5% ABV or 115 proof. Always, much like the Old Forester 1910 that we killed off, always we always have a bottle on hand here at the Whiskey Cove. It is part of the furniture. Old Forester 1920 is always great. A bottle of Old Forester that I like a little bit better than the 1920, and that is Old Forester 1924. Why do I like it better? Well, that's because we did another blind with Old Forester. We did a bunch of bottles. I think it was like 10 bottles overall. Old Forester 1920 came out on 1924, I should say, came out on top blind. What came in second? 1920, and that's why I like it a little bit better. ABV, 50% ABV or 100 proof, and of course aged 10 years old. 1924, aged 10 years is kind of the name. Pricing on this. So the first bottle I picked up of Old Forester 1924, I did overpay. I paid $155. I really wanted that bottle and I wasn't willing to wait on it a little bit. And if you have, you know, a little bit extra money and there's a bottle that you really want and you see it and the price is a little high, then maybe buy it, you know, think about buying it. How much do you want it? Does the money reflect that? And only you can make that decision. However, I wasn't looking to pay $155 again. So I sat and sat, waited and waited, and I managed to see this. It dropped into my lap at $99.99. Excellent price. I think we have 2 backups and 1 open bottle of this, and I think we're good for a while. That is Old Forester 1924, aged 10 years. 3 bottles left, and another bottle, much like the early times, that we're not really seeing so much here in Colorado. I emailed Brown-Forman and Cooper's Craft, because that bottle is Cooper's Craft 100, much like I did with Sazerac in early times. And I asked the question, not really seen as much in Colorado, and it looks like someone's telling me, a local store here, that the distribution isn't coming here. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on? Waited, and that was about 3 months ago. We didn't receive anything back. Some folks who are watching this channel still see that they see some of the bottles around and that there's no issues with distribution, but then some people who posted said that they are seeing the similar thing. So maybe it's just where you're located. Maybe they're changing a few things up on the distribution end. However, regardless, even if it's no issues with the distribution, I paid $25 for it, and that is a great price for a great bottle of whiskey, and I'm always happy to have great bottles of whiskey on hand. So regardless what happens, Cooper's Craft 100 adds to the already couple of bottles that I have from them. Very happy to get that. And the last 2 bottles, let's do them at the same time. So this is a bottle. These bottles seem to be getting marked up here a lot in Colorado. I feel like Phoenix, Mesa area seems to be the mecca of the John J. Bowman small batch and single barrel. We were there in October or so, last year, November. No, actually, scratch that. We were there in December, and you're still able to find these for around $50, not on the back shelves, just on the regular shelves in between the aisles. And that's a great price, and that's the way they should be marked. These were about $30. So I didn't pick them up and bring them back with me, but these were dropped here in Colorado. They kind of go through waves. Every couple or every few or so months, you'll see them hit the shelves, but because they don't come to Colorado that much, people tend to make them allocated, and they shouldn't really be, because there's normally a big amount that goes dispersed throughout the US. However, in terms of flavor, you could argue that they should be. This is very similar to Buffalo Trace, in my opinion. So that's why you want to kind of stick around $30 for this bottle. But it's the single barrels that really set these 2 bottles apart, because the single barrels compete with E.H. Taylor single barrels, in my opinion. And I don't just make these outlandish statements. They're usually backed up by my own scientific process. I've already mentioned blinds twice tonight, and you know what? I'll mention it a 3rd time, because I did a blind with this, and I did a blind with the E.H. Taylor single barrel, and the John J. Bowman single barrel, the Bowman single barrel came out on top. So in my own experience and to my own palate, this is a better bottle. Of course, it's a single barrel, much like that E.H. Taylor was. However, my own experience with the 2 brands, I find that consistently John J. Bowman single barrels are a little better. That's not to say that you'll find an E.H. Taylor single barrel and it'll absolutely knock your socks off, and it could be better than anything that you've had from the Bowman distillery or the Abraham Bowman or the Bowman brothers. I don't know what it's called exactly off the top of my head. But that's the beauty of single barrels. You can have one that can be absolutely awesome, and then you can have another one and it will level that playing field just a little bit. So $50, $30 here in Colorado. You never see it. I saw it. I grabbed them both. We have a couple of backups for each one of those. And when I say a couple for that John J. Bowman single barrel, I mean, I have a couple, but it's an excellent bottle of whiskey. It's a bottle of whiskey that's not going to get any cheaper. Price is going to keep going up and up and up and up. And I think I was absolutely shouting from the rooftops on like the first or second or third video that I did of the Whiskey Cove, just how good that has been. So for anybody who's been here from the very beginning, you very much know by now how good that is. With that being said, hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. It might be a month or two until we do another one of these. Hoping to get down to Kentucky, Nashville soon, so that should be fun. And again, if you want to win an excellent bottle of whiskey, that is the old Rip Van Winkle 10, the Wild Turkey Rare Breed Non-Chill Filtered, and then 4 other bottles that we announced. The 8,500 subscribers is coming up real soon, and we'll have another great bottle to announce. So after this video, go down below, hit the description, enter your raffle ticket, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon up there too, so you never miss a beat. You'll know when the bottles will get announced too. With that being said, as we drink through the world's whiskies one glass at a time, thank you so much for watching. Cheers.